The first sound from the Xenotone lingered in the air like a faint echo, as though the hall itself was holding its breath. For a moment, it was small, fragile, almost broken. The aliens began to exchange amused glances once again, their smirks slowly returning. Some leaned back, convinced the human had reached the end of his attempt. But Daniel did not stop. He steadied his hands and tried again. His fingers pressed against the strings in a way that was natural to him, not forced by memory or instruction. The Xenotone responded differently this time. The sound rose, soft and clear, like a gentle breeze moving through leaves. The aliens tilted their heads, curious now, for the note was not what they expected. Another note followed, and then another. At first, they were simple, almost like single drops of rain falling on quiet water. But soon the drops formed a rhythm, connecting one to another, building into something that carried meaning. Daniel's eyes closed as he played, his body relaxing, as though he was not standing before a vast crowd of alien eyes, but sitting alone with an instrument that wanted to be understood. The hall grew silent. The mocking laughter faded away, leaving only the growing melody. The sound of the Xenotone deepened, richer than before, as if the strings themselves had found a voice through him. An elder alien frowned and leaned closer to the glowing rails that marked the council's seat. "This is not possible," he whispered. His words carried no laughter, only quiet shock. Others began to shift uneasily. Their smirks were gone. The notes were not loud, not grand, but they carried something far stronger. It was not skill that surprised them, it was feeling. The music seemed to touch something they did not expect to feel. One alien, tall with golden eyes, looked around the hall. He saw the faces of his people, their expressions softening in ways they had never shown during a gathering. He whispered to himself, "Why does this sound remind me of something?" The melody began to change again. Daniel's hands moved more freely, guided by instinct. The notes climbed higher, painting pictures not with sight but with sound. In the minds of the listeners, images began to form. Vast oceans rolling beneath blue skies. Winds rushing across green fields. The laughter of children around fires. The sorrow of parting, the hope of reunion. The music carried echoes of Earth, a world none of them had seen, but which now lived in their hearts through the Xenotone's song. Gasps filled the hall. Some aliens placed their hands on their chests, as if to steady themselves from emotions too strange and heavy. Their eyes shimmered faintly, though none wanted to admit the feeling rising within them. Daniel himself did not notice. He was caught between worlds, the hall before him and the memories of his own people flowing through the notes. His fingers danced lightly across the glowing strings, and the Xenotone glowed brighter in return, as if feeding from his spirit. The council leader, who had spoken with such authority before, sat in silence now. His sharp gaze softened with every note. He had lived long, seen many wonders, heard songs from across galaxies, yet none had touched him in this way. He turned slightly to the elder at his side and whispered, "It feels alive. The Xenotone sings through him." Whispers spread, not of mockery this time, but of awe. The aliens who had been so quick to laugh now sat forward, afraid to miss even a single sound. Their ears strained to hold every note, as if the melody might vanish if they blinked. The music deepened again, taking on a sorrowful tone. It told of struggle, of journeys through darkness, of the weight of loneliness in the endless night. The aliens could feel it. They could feel the burden of being small in a universe that often seemed endless. They had never thought of humans as carrying such weight, yet the music showed them a truth they could not deny. Some in the audience closed their eyes, unable to hold back the tears that pressed at the corners of their vision. They did not understand how a simple human could move them so deeply. And then, just when the sorrow seemed almost too much to bear, Daniel shifted again. The strings brightened with notes of hope, soft at first, then stronger. The melody rose, like light breaking through clouds. It spoke of survival, of standing even when the night was long, of believing there was always another dawn. The aliens leaned forward as if being pulled by invisible hands. Their hearts beat with the rhythm of the song, some for the first time in centuries. They had known power, knowledge, and endless life, but they had forgotten the raw weight of feeling. Daniel's eyes opened slowly. He looked out at the hall and saw the silence. The smirks were gone. The laughter was gone. What remained was something deeper, a silence filled with wonder and emotion. His hands still moved across the Xenotone, each note binding him to the listeners more tightly than any words could. And in that moment, everyone understood something had changed. The human was not just playing an instrument. He was opening a door they had forgotten even existed. The final note of his first song lingered like a soft glow, refusing to fade. No one dared to breathe too loudly, as if afraid to break the fragile spell that had been cast. Daniel lowered his hands gently, the Xenotone still shining faintly in his grasp. And across the hall, one alien whispered into the silence. "This is not music. This is a soul speaking." The words hung in the air, and no one could deny them. The challenge had begun, but it was no longer the human who was being tested. It was them. The final echo of the first melody had not yet faded, but the hall was no longer the same place it had been only moments before. Where there had been laughter, there was now silence. Where there had been mocking smiles, there were faces lost in thought, eyes filled with questions they could not yet speak. The Xenotone still glowed faintly, its strings trembling as if longing for more. Daniel stood quietly, his hands resting on the instrument, his breath steady. No one moved. No one spoke. It was as if the hall itself feared that even the smallest sound would shatter what had just been born. Yet Daniel felt something inside him, a gentle push, a quiet call, telling him he was not done. The Xenotone had more to share, and through him, it would speak again. He placed his hands once more on the shining strings. A new sound rose, soft and low, like the beginning of a dream. The first notes were gentle, but they carried deeper weight than before. The aliens leaned forward unconsciously, their hearts already caught by the promise of what was coming. The melody spread outward like ripples on still water, and with it came visions. Not visions of the hall, but of places far beyond. In their minds, the aliens began to see oceans stretching endlessly under skies so blue they seemed alive. They saw waves crashing against cliffs, and sunlight dancing on the water. They smelled salt and wind, even though they had never stood on such shores. One alien closed his eyes tightly, a shiver running through him. He whispered, almost in disbelief, "I can see it. I can feel it. But this is not my memory." The music shifted again. The oceans gave way to green fields, wide and endless, filled with the sound of laughter carried by the wind. Children ran across the grass, their voices filled with joy, their steps filled with life. For the first time, many of the aliens felt something strange, something they could not name. It was simple, pure, and painfully beautiful. Daniel did not know what images they were seeing. He only played what his heart carried. The Xenotone seemed to understand, guiding his fingers, filling the air with more than just sound. It was memory. It was feeling. It was the story of a world far away, told not through words but through the soul. The aliens' faces began to change. Some who had never shown emotion before now looked as though they carried years of weight in their eyes. A few lowered their heads, unable to meet the strength of the music. Others clutched their robes tightly, as though trying to hold onto something slipping through their grasp. And then, the melody deepened. The joy gave way to sorrow, a sorrow so heavy it pulled at their hearts. They saw storms raging across seas, fire falling from skies, and people standing against the endless dark. They felt the loneliness of a small world in the vast universe, fragile yet unbroken. For the first time, they understood what it meant to be human, always standing, even when the stars seemed far beyond reach. Tears slipped down the face of a young alien who had once laughed the loudest. He quickly brushed them away, but they came again, unstoppable. He whispered to the elder beside him, his voice shaking, "It hurts. Why does it hurt?" The elder could only shake his head. "Because it is truth. Because it is life." Daniel's eyes opened slowly. He could see their faces now, no longer filled with pride or superiority, but with raw emotion. He had not meant to bring them pain, but the music was not his alone. It was Earth's song, a song of struggle and of hope, of loss and of love. The Xenotone was only the bridge, carrying that truth into hearts that had never known it before. The melody brightened suddenly, lifting from sorrow into something greater. It was hope, bright, fragile, but shining like a flame in the dark. The aliens felt it, each one of them. They saw it in their minds as a small light, standing against endless shadows, refusing to fade. They felt the truth of it in their chests. Humanity might be small, but its spirit was vast. One of the highest council members, who had sat unmoved through countless trials and songs, leaned forward with trembling hands. His voice was low, almost a whisper. "This cannot be. This is not a performance. This is a soul speaking across worlds." The words carried through the silence, and no one dared to argue. They all felt it. The hall that had once been filled with pride now sat as humble witnesses to something they could not control. Daniel's hands moved gently, bringing the melody to a close, but the visions did not fade. The echoes lingered in the minds of the aliens long after the final note had been struck. They sat frozen, each lost in what they had seen, each carrying memories that were not their own. And when Daniel finally lifted his hands from the strings, the Xenotone glowed brighter than ever before, as though it too was alive, as though it too had been waiting for this moment. The silence that followed was heavy, filled not with mockery or pride, but with awe. For the first time in countless years, the aliens did not know what to say. They had come expecting to laugh. Instead, they were left with hearts that trembled, carrying feelings they had long forgotten. The human had not only played the Xenotone, he had awakened them. The glow of the Xenotone had not faded. Its strings shimmered with soft light, and the air in the hall carried a gentle hum, as though the instrument itself was still singing even after Daniel's hands had stilled. The aliens remained in silence, their hearts unsettled, their thoughts caught in memories that were not their own. No one dared to break the moment, for they all knew something beyond their understanding had just taken place. Daniel looked down at his hands. He felt warmth, not from the hall's lights, but from the Xenotone itself. It was as if the instrument had joined with him, as if it was breathing through his touch. He had expected to play clumsy notes, to bring awkward laughter, but what had happened was far more than music. It was as though the Xenotone had been waiting for him. A quiet murmur spread across the audience. Some whispered in disbelief, others in awe. The council leader raised his hand, trying to regain composure. His voice was firm, but even he could not keep the tremor from it. "Human, tell us, how do you know the song?" Daniel shook his head. "I do not know it. I only played what I felt." The words hung in the air, simple yet heavy. The aliens looked at one another, their expressions shifting. To them, music was skill, practice, discipline. But the human spoke as though it was something else, something born from the heart, not the hands. The council chamber, vast and ancient, began to respond in ways none had seen before. Symbols carved into the crystal walls long ago flickered with faint light, pulsing in rhythm with the Xenotone's lingering hum. Elders turned pale, their eyes wide. "The walls awaken," one whispered. "It has not happened in 1,000 cycles." Daniel touched the strings again, softly, almost by accident. The glow spread further, reaching across the floor like waves of light. The hum deepened, and the hall itself seemed to vibrate gently, alive with hidden energy. The great hall of the alien empire was filled with laughter. They looked at the human with mocking eyes, whispering that he would fail. In the center stood the Xenotone, an ancient instrument no human had ever played. It shimmered with a strange, living glow, almost daring him to touch it. Daniel stepped forward. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of every eye fixed on him. The aliens smirked, waiting for his humiliation. One voice hissed, "Play it, human. Show us your weakness." But as his fingers brushed the strings, the hall fell silent. The Xenotone pulsed under his touch, as if it had been waiting for him. What followed would not be laughter. It would be something the aliens had never felt before, something that would shake their very souls. The hall of the alien council was alive with sound. Bright lights shone down from crystal walls, and the air hummed with strange energy. Aliens of many shapes filled the seats, their eyes fixed on one figure standing in the center. A human. His name was Daniel. He was the only human in the hall, and every gaze seemed to weigh heavily upon him. At the far end, resting on a tall stand, was the Xenotone. It was not like any instrument found on Earth. Its body shimmered like liquid silver, and long glowing strings stretched across it, moving slightly as if stirred by some unseen breeze. To the aliens, the Xenotone was a sacred thing. It was said to hold the songs of the stars themselves. Few could play it, and none had ever believed a human could. The aliens whispered among themselves, their voices rising like soft waves of mockery. Some smiled faintly, others smirked openly. "He will fail," one said, shaking his head. "His hands will not find the sound." Another added with a laugh, "Let him try. It will be a good show." Daniel could hear them, though he kept his face calm. Inside, his heart beat fast, but he did not let the fear show. He had not come here to impress them with tricks. He had come because he felt something deep within when he first heard of the Xenotone. Something told him it was waiting for him. The council leader, tall and robed in silver cloth, lifted a hand. The hall grew quiet. His voice was deep and echoing. "Human. You asked to touch the Xenotone. You asked to play what no one of your kind has touched before. Do you understand what you risk? If you fail, the shame will not be yours alone, but your people's as well." Daniel nodded once. "I understand." A ripple of amusement passed through the audience. They expected hesitation, maybe even retreat. But the human did not move away. He stepped forward, each footstep soft against the shining floor. His eyes stayed fixed on the instrument as though nothing else mattered. When he reached it, the Xenotone seemed larger than before. Its glow reflected in his eyes, and for a moment, he wondered if he was truly worthy. He reached out, slowly, his hand hovering above the strings. The air tingled, as though alive. The aliens leaned closer, some holding back laughter. "He will not last even one note," whispered a voice from the crowd. "The Xenotone will silence him." Daniel drew in a long breath. He thought of Earth, its oceans, its forests, its endless skies. He thought of music from home, of simple tunes played on wooden guitars, of songs sung around fires. Music had always been part of what it meant to be human. Perhaps that was enough. His fingers brushed one string. A soft hum filled the hall, low and uncertain. The aliens chuckled, shaking their heads. As expected, one murmured. Another whispered, "The sound is broken, the human is lost." But Daniel did not stop. He placed both hands upon the strings and let his instincts guide him. The Xenotone pulsed under his touch, almost like a living heartbeat. His own heartbeat matched its rhythm. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound flow. The hall grew quiet again. The laughter slowed, replaced by a silence filled with curiosity. The human's hands moved carefully, uncertain but steady. The Xenotone responded, its hum deepening, the glow spreading softly across its frame. An elder alien leaned forward, frowning. This should not be. Daniel did not hear. He was lost in the moment. Each note he played came smoother than the last, as though the instrument remembered him, or perhaps as though he remembered it. The soft sounds rose higher, carrying a strange beauty. It was not perfect, but it was alive. The aliens, who had smirked only moments before, now found themselves listening. A hush fell across the hall, broken only by the trembling notes of the Xenotone. One alien whispered, almost against his will, "Why does it move me?" Daniel's eyes opened again. He looked at the glowing strings, at his own hands, and felt a connection he could not explain. He was no master of alien music, but the Xenotone did not resist him. It welcomed him. He lifted his head slowly, meeting the eyes of the council. For the first time since he entered, their smirks had faded. There was no more laughter. Only watchful silence. And in that silence, Daniel continued to play, the hall holding its breath, waiting for what might come next. Gasps filled the air. The aliens shifted uneasily, but not out of fear, out of wonder. Their long-held beliefs were being rewritten before their eyes. They had thought the Xenotone belonged only to them, a relic of their culture and pride. Yet now, in the hands of a human, it revealed secrets even they had forgotten. The melody returned, rising slowly. At first, it was soft, carrying sadness, as though remembering all the years the Xenotone had remained silent. But soon the sound grew stronger, reaching higher, filling the vast chamber with waves of emotion that touched every heart. The aliens began to feel their own memories stir, memories buried so deeply they had thought them lost forever. One council member pressed his hands against his face, whispering, "I see my home, the first day of sun after endless storms." Another alien trembled, "I hear my mother's voice, though she has been gone for centuries." It was not only human memories now. The Xenotone was reflecting their own, weaving them together with Daniel's song. Every note carried both Earth's spirit and their forgotten past, creating a bridge between species who had once seen themselves as so different. The council leader gripped the edge of his seat, his eyes wide with awe. "He is awakening the old song," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "The song of truth, the one we thought lost forever." The music swelled higher, and the glowing symbols on the walls brightened. They told stories through their light, stories of creation, of stars being born, of civilizations rising and falling. The hall itself had become part of the performance, a living witness to the song that carried across time. Daniel's face was calm, but his heart raced. He did not understand how he knew what to play. He only followed the pull inside him, trusting that the music knew the way. The Xenotone responded eagerly, its glow surrounding him, wrapping him in light. He looked like more than a lone human in an alien hall. He looked like a messenger carrying something greater than himself. The aliens could no longer hold back their emotions. Some bowed their heads, some closed their eyes, some simply let tears fall. They had come to laugh at a human's attempt, but now they sat humbled, touched by feelings they had forgotten they could even feel. And as the music reached its height, the council leader stood slowly, his robes shining in the glow. His voice was unsteady, not with command, but with awe. "Stop him, or he will awaken more than we are ready to face." But Daniel did not stop. His hands moved with certainty, as though guided by something beyond sight. The Xenotone sang louder, brighter, its notes wrapping around every being in the hall. There was no mockery left, no pride, no doubt. Only hearts trembling in unity, bound together by a song too powerful to be denied. The melody pressed forward, carrying sorrow and hope together, breaking down walls of arrogance that had stood for ages. The aliens sat motionless, unable to resist, unable to look away. They were no longer watching a human play an instrument. They were witnessing the awakening of something far greater than themselves. And in that moment, as the final notes of the rising melody echoed through the chamber, every alien knew a truth they had never spoken. The human song was not just music. It was a reminder that even the smallest voice could awaken the stars. The great hall of the Alien Council had never been so quiet. The beings who once laughed and whispered about the strange human now sat in silence, their many eyes fixed on him. Ethan stood in the center, his guitar resting against his chest, his hands calm but his heart full of fire. He could feel the weight of every gaze, but he no longer feared it. The sound he carried was stronger than their doubt. A soft light surrounded him as he strummed the first note. The sound traveled like a living thing, filling the air with waves that shimmered and pulsed. The walls of the hall vibrated, and for the first time, even the coldest aliens felt something they couldn't describe. It wasn't just sound, it was a story. Every note told them about dreams, about loss, about hope. It carried laughter and sorrow together. One alien, known for his unshakable mind, closed his eyes. A memory rose within him, one he thought he had buried long ago. A moment of being small, holding the hand of his mother, watching stars fall across the sky. The memory was fragile, but the music made it clear again, and tears formed in his eyes. He quickly looked away, afraid others might see. Another alien, a queen from a distant world, felt her chest tighten. For years she had believed she could not feel joy. But now, hearing the rhythm of Ethan's song, she felt warmth flow through her veins. It was like a voice telling her that she was still alive, that her heart still beat for more than duty. Ethan's music grew stronger, like waves of an endless ocean. Each chord reached deep into every being, breaking down walls they had built for centuries. The proud council, who once smirked and whispered, sat frozen. They were not just listening, they were remembering who they had been before power, before fear, before endless wars. The hall seemed to change with the sound. The glowing crystals on the ceiling flickered, as if they too wanted to join. The floor hummed like a drum, answering the guitar's voice. The air itself seemed alive, carrying the music into every corner. Even the guards at the doors, trained to stay emotionless, felt their hands tremble. Ethan's eyes closed as he played, and he saw in his mind not just the hall, but the whole galaxy. He saw stars listening. He saw planets opening their skies. He saw people, human and alien, sharing the same heartbeat in the music. He knew now that this was not just sound, it was a bridge, a truth that could not be silenced. When he opened his eyes again, he saw the council leaning forward. No one moved, no one breathed too loud, as if afraid to break the spell. For the first time, the human was not small before them. He was something greater. His music had touched what no power, no rule, no law could ever reach, the soul. As the last note lingered in the air, silence followed. A deep, heavy silence. No laughter, no smirks, no whispers. Only wide eyes and quiet hearts. Ethan looked at them, waiting. And then, slowly, the sound of soft hands striking together rose from one side of the hall. It was clumsy, hesitant, but it was real. The first alien applause. Others followed, and soon the hall shook with the sound of respect. For a human. For his song. For the truth that music was stronger than pride. Ethan did not smile, not yet. He knew this was only the beginning. They had listened. But what came next would decide everything. The great hall of the Intergalactic Assembly was filled with quiet tension. Delegates from across the stars sat in their seats, waiting for the final result of the challenge that had shaken the galaxy. Some leaned forward, others whispered softly, and many simply stared at the human standing at the center of the chamber. His presence alone carried weight, not because of power or rank, but because he had done something no one believed possible. The giant screen above them displayed the last trial score. Numbers glowed, shifting until they locked in place, showing the undeniable truth. Earth had not only passed but surpassed even the highest of galactic expectations. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Species who once mocked humans now found themselves clapping without even realizing it. Others remained silent, unable to accept how the smallest of the so-called young races had achieved what the oldest civilizations could not. The human didn't raise his arms in victory. Instead, he simply stood tall, his expression calm but steady. That quiet confidence was louder than any celebration. Even the alien queen, who had predicted his failure with a smile, now looked at him with a mixture of respect and something deeper, something she did not yet understand. As the assembly chair announced Earth's official acceptance into the council, the human glanced around. He didn't see enemies or rivals anymore. He saw future partners, though he knew trust would take time. The galaxy had challenged humanity to prove its worth, expecting them to fail. Instead, they had shown strength, creativity, and unity in ways no one foresaw. But deep down, the human also knew this was not the end. The challenge was only the beginning. The galaxy had tested Earth, but now that Earth stood among them, many would wonder, what else could humans do? What hidden potential still remained, waiting to unfold? The future stretched wide and uncertain, and every pair of eyes in that chamber silently asked the same question. What role would humanity play in the destiny of the stars? The answer, for now, remained a mystery. But one thing was clear. The galaxy would never again look at Earth the same way. And as the human stepped down from the platform, his steady footsteps echoed with promise, the promise that humanity was here to stay.